Some places, they just breathe darkness. They hold on to it, deep in their bones, like a secret disease that never truly dies. You can paint over the cracks, tear down the walls, but the echoes, the feel of what happened there, that never leaves. It just waits, and sometimes it waits for you. Tonight, we're venturing into one of those places. A place where the screams once echoed down sterile hallways, where despair clung to every window pane, and where the human mind, in its most fractured state, left an indelible stain. We're talking about Northwood Asylum, and Mark, our protagonist, he thought it was just another night shift. He was wrong, so very, very wrong. Mark needed the money, simple as that. A few extra bucks to cover rent, maybe a new set of tires. So when his buddy Dave offered him a gig as a night security guard at the old Northwood Asylum, now just a decaying skeleton awaiting demolition, Mark shrugged. Easy money, he'd said. Just walk around an empty building, keep squatters out. What's the worst that could happen? Oh Mark, if only you knew. Northwood stood on the outskirts of town, cloaked in overgrown vines and a permanent shadow, even in daylight. It was one of those sprawling, Gothic structures, built back when mental health was more about locking people away than actually helping them. Iron gates, barred windows, and an architecture that screamed containment. Inside, it was worse. The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of dust, decay, and something else, something faintly metallic, like old blood, or perhaps just the faint, lingering scent of antiseptic from decades past. The silence wasn't empty, it was loaded. A silence that hummed with 1,000 unspoken tragedies. Mark arrived for his first shift around 10 p.m. Dave met him at the main entrance, a massive, ornate wooden door, scarred and peeling. "All right, man," Dave said, handing him a bulky ring of keys and a dim, flickering flashlight. "Perimeter check every hour. Make sure no homeless folks are setting up camp. Report anything suspicious." He gestured vaguely at the imposing structure. "Most of the power's cut, so watch your step. And try not to freak yourself out. Place is old." Dave's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Please," Mark scoffed, trying to sound braver than he felt. "It's an abandoned building. Ghosts aren't real, man." Dave just grunted, then glanced over his shoulder, a quick, nervous movement. "Right, well, good luck. My shift's over. See you in the morning." And with that he was gone, his taillights disappearing into the inky blackness. Mark stood alone, the chill night air biting at his exposed skin. The weight of the keys felt heavy in his hand. He pushed open the creaking main door and stepped into the absolute black maw of Northwood. The door groaned shut behind him with a sound that echoed like a coffin lid. His flashlight beam cut through the oppressive darkness, revealing a grand but utterly desolate main hall. Peeling wallpaper, fallen plaster, and a thick carpet of dust covered everything. He could hear his own heartbeat, a frantic drum in the cavernous space. He started his first patrol. The first hour was uneventful. He walked the long, silent corridors, each one a mirror image of the last. Empty rooms, overturned furniture, forgotten files scattered across the floor like dead leaves. He saw rusted bed frames, old medical charts yellowed with age, detailing patients with diagnoses that now sounded barbaric. Hysteria, melancholia, moral insanity. He read one, a woman named Elena, admitted for excessive grief after losing her child. He shuddered. It was easy to imagine the despair that had saturated these walls. He was making his way through what looked like an old common room, a vast space with broken windows looking out onto nothing but dense woods. The wind outside whined, a mournful sound. He was about to turn, head to the next section, when he heard it, faint, distant, a sound like a soft, drawn-out cough. Mark stopped dead. He held his breath, straining his ears. Nothing, just the wind. "Probably the building settling," he muttered to himself, his voice a little shaky. "Old place." He kept moving, but a seed of unease had been planted. The second hour passed, and the feeling grew. The air seemed colder in certain spots, like walking through an invisible freezer door. He swore he could hear faint whispers, just at the edge of hearing, like a radio station not quite tuned in. He'd pause, listen intently, and then silence, always silence. He told himself it was just his imagination, playing tricks in the dark. He was tired, alone, and surrounded by the kind of history that messes with your head. Then, as he was checking the old cafeteria, a room still eerily set up with long, scarred tables and benches, he heard something more distinct. A soft thump, like something heavy had just fallen a floor above him. He froze. This wasn't the wind, this wasn't settling. His heart hammered against his ribs. He gripped his flashlight tighter, knuckles white. "Hello," he called out, his voice cracking slightly. His own voice echoed, thin and swallowed by the vastness. No answer. Of course not. He decided to go investigate, against his better judgment. He found the stairwell, the steps groaning under his weight, each creak amplifying the tension. Up on the next floor, he found himself in another long corridor, darker than the last. The air here was heavy, almost suffocating. And that smell, it was stronger now. Not just dust and decay, but something else. Something sickly sweet, like fading flowers, but undercut with something metallic and sharp, like a hospital, a sick hospital. He moved slowly, his flashlight beam sweeping across rows of doors, most of them ajar. He passed room after room, each one a stark, empty box. Then he saw it, one door, just one. It was slowly, almost imperceptibly, swinging, like someone had just walked out. Mark felt a primal fear clench his gut. He knew he was alone. He had to be. He watched the door for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds. It stopped swinging, resting slightly ajar. He swallowed hard. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to turn and run. But something else, something stubborn and maybe foolish, compelled him forward. He approached the door, his steps heavy and slow. He pushed it open fully with the tip of his boot. The air in that room was thick, heavy, and strangely cold, like a breath held too long. And on the wall, scratched deeply into the peeling paint, a child's drawing. A stick figure with wide, empty eyes, holding hands with another stick figure. And above them scrawled in crude, desperate letters, "SHE never leaves." A cold dread seeped into Mark's bones. He backed away slowly, his eyes fixed on the drawing. This was too much. This wasn't just an old building. This was something else. Something wrong. He turned to leave, and that's when he heard it, clear as day, a low, guttural moan coming from behind him, from the room he had just left. Mark didn't think. He ran. He ran blindly, the beam of his flashlight a frantic, dizzying dance, illuminating fleeting, twisted glimpses of decay and shadow, things he swore weren't there before. He fumbled down the stairs, tripping once, almost falling headfirst. He didn't care, he just needed out. He burst back into the main hall, gasping for air, heart pounding like a drum solo. He spun around, trying to catch his breath, when his flashlight beam hit something tall, gaunt. Standing at the far end of the hall, shrouded in shadow, it was barely a shape, a disturbance in the darkness, but it was there, and it was definitely looking at him. He couldn't make out details, but the sheer presence of it, the way it seemed to absorb the light, was terrifying. He fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking so violently he almost dropped them. He found the main door, shoved the key in, and twisted. It groaned, it caught. Just as he felt the lock release, a horrifying sound ripped through the silence. A high-pitched guttural shriek that seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through the very floorboards beneath his feet. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated agony and rage, and it was right behind him. He wrenched the door open, not daring to look back, and stumbled out into the blessedly fresh, if still terrifyingly dark, night. He slammed the door shut, hearing a sickening thud from inside, as if something had just hurled itself against the solid wood. Mark didn't stop. He ran to his car, fumbling for his keys, his hands still shaking uncontrollably. He jammed the key into the ignition, the engine sputtering to life after a few agonizing seconds. He threw the car into reverse, tires spitting gravel, and sped away from Northwood, not daring to glance in his rearview mirror. He drove straight home, the terrifying sounds and images seared into his mind. He didn't even remember the drive. He just knew he was away from that place. He never went back to Northwood. Not for the pay, not for his forgotten bag, not for anything. Dave called him, concerned, a few days later. Mark mumbled some excuse about a family emergency. Dave just sighed. "Figured," he said quietly, place gets to people, some things they don't stay dead. Mark didn't correct him. He knew better now. He knew that some places aren't just old buildings. They're living tombs, holding on to the suffering, the madness, the terror of everyone who ever stepped inside. And they don't just hold on to it. They nurture it. They feed it. And sometimes, when you're alone in the dark, they let it out. Even now, years later, Mark says he can still feel the cold spots in his own home. He swears he can hear faint whispers when he's alone at night, just at the edge of his hearing. And sometimes, when the wind howls just right, he can almost hear that shriek, that chilling, soul-rending shriek. Because some places, they don't just let go. They cling to you, they become a part of you, and you become a part of them. And the fear never truly leaves. It just waits, just like Northwood, always waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to walk through its doors. Or maybe it's already found its way out.